Joseph Stewart was a respected name in the business world, owner of a chain of luxury hotels. He had everything many could desire: money, vast properties, expensive cars, and an influential social circle. But for Joseph, the greatest treasure was his son, Liam. From a young age, Liam was taught to value the simple things in life and to treat everyone with respect and compassion, regardless of their social status. Joseph and Liam shared a close and affectionate relationship. Despite his many responsibilities, Joseph always made time to spend with his son, teaching him the importance of being fair and generous. "Remember," Liam Joseph often said, "the true value of a person is not in what they own, but in what they are able to share with others." Liam, with his bright eyes and sincere smile, absorbed these lessons with enthusiasm. At 20 years old, Liam was a charismatic figure, beloved by everyone who knew him. He had a special way of making people around him feel important and valued. Often he and Joseph were seen participating in community events, helping with charity projects, and always willing to lend a helping hand. "Dad, I love how we can make a difference in people's lives," Liam said one day as they served meals at a homeless shelter. Joseph smiled with pride, placing his hand on his son's shoulder. "Liam, the world needs more people like you. Never lose the kindness and humility you carry in your heart." Despite their wealth, Joseph and Liam lived relatively modestly. Joseph firmly believed that luxury was a responsibility, not a privilege to be flaunted. "Liam, always remember that money is just a tool. It can build or destroy, depending on how we use it," Joseph advised as they walked through the corridors of one of the family hotels, greeting employees by name and asking about their families. This attitude of humility and generosity not only brought Joseph and Liam closer, but also earned the respect and admiration of everyone around them. They were a living example that true wealth is measured not by what one owns, but by the positive impact one has on the lives of others. Over time, a shadow began to form over Liam's usual brightness. The young man, always energetic and full of life, began to feel inexplicably tired. Initially, Liam dismissed the symptoms, attributing them to the stress of responsibilities and activities he loved to get involved in. "It's just fatigue, Dad. Nothing to worry about," he told Joseph, trying to reassure his father as they prepared a charity event. However, Liam's fatigue soon was accompanied by persistent headaches and a feeling of weakness that did not pass. Concerned, Joseph insisted that Liam see a doctor, but the young man always found an excuse to postpone the appointment. "I'm fine, Dad. I don't want to waste time with doctors while we have so much to do," he responded with a forced smile, trying to hide his concern. But the situation worsened. One day, during a visit to one of the shelters they used to support, Liam, when getting up to serve a meal, felt intense dizziness and fainted. Panic took over the place. Joseph, heart clenching, rushed to hold his son, calling his name repeatedly. "Liam, wake up, son, please." His voice trembled with a fear he had never felt before. They quickly went to the hospital, where Liam underwent a series of tests. Joseph, sitting next to his son's hospital bed, held his hand, his face marked by worry. When the doctor entered, his grave expression revealed what Joseph feared. "Mr. Stewart, we need to talk," the doctor began with a serious look. In the office, the doctor explained that Liam had a rare and aggressive terminal illness. The news hit Joseph like a devastating blow. "But is there anything we can do?" "Any treatment?" Joseph asked, his voice laden with despair. The doctor, with a compassionate look, explained that the disease was at an advanced stage and that the options were limited. Joseph, struggling to maintain his composure, returned to Liam's room. Till unconscious, he sat beside his son, holding his hand tightly. "My boy, we'll get through this together," he murmured as silent tears streamed down his face. He knew the path ahead would be difficult, but he was determined to do everything he could to be by Liam's side, offering him all the love and support he needed. Following the devastating diagnosis, Liam made a difficult decision. He withdrew from all his friends. He did not want them to see him in that vulnerable and weakened state. He knew the image they had of him was of a vibrant, full-of-life young man, and he did not want the disease to tarnish that memory. "I don't want them to see me like this," Daddy confessed to Joseph, his voice weak but determined. "I want them to remember me as I was, not as someone confined to a bed." Joseph respected his son's decision, although it went against his heart's desire. He knew how much the friends meant to Liam and how much they could offer support in this difficult time. "Liam, they care about you. I'm sure they just want to be by your side, as you have always been for them," Joseph tried to argue, but Liam remained firm in his decision. Days passed slowly, each more difficult than the last. Joseph did everything in his power to make the environment more comfortable for Liam, bringing his favorite books, organizing visits from specialists, and even trying to distract him with happy stories and memories. But Liam's health continued to deteriorate, and he became increasingly reserved and introspective. "Dad, I think this is my way of dealing with all this," Liam explained one day, looking out the window of his room that overlooked the garden. "I don't want anyone to pity me. I'd rather they remember me as someone strong and full of life." Joseph, sitting beside the bed, held Liam's hand tenderly. "You are much stronger than you think, my son. I am so proud of you," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. Despite all Joseph's efforts and those of the medical team, the disease relentlessly progressed. Liam, always brave, faced each day with silent determination. But the inevitable happened. One quiet afternoon, with Joseph by his side, Liam took his last breath. The room, which had always been filled with laughter and lively conversations, plunged into heavy silence. Joseph felt the weight of loss, a pain so deep it seemed impossible to bear. Liam's death left Joseph devastated. He remained by his son's body, holding his hand one last time. "You were the best son anyone could have," he whispered, tears streaming freely down his face. "I will love you forever, Liam." The pain of loss settled deeply in Joseph's heart, knowing that life would never be the same without the cheerful and bright presence of his beloved son. After Liam's death, Joseph's life crumbled. The vibrant businessman who once radiated confidence and leadership became a shadow of what he had been. The pain of losing his only son was unbearable, and Joseph felt as if an essential part of his soul had been torn away. The sparkle in his eyes disappeared, replaced by deep and constant sadness. Joseph began to withdraw from the business, something he and Liam had always cared for so tenderly. The meetings that were once the essence of his routine became an unbearable burden. He could no longer focus on finances or business strategies, and Liam's absence made any effort feel futile. "What's the point of all this without him?" Joseph would murmur to himself, lost in memories of happier times. Over time, Joseph's neglect of the business began to show its effects. His business partners, who initially tried to be understanding, began to distance themselves, realizing that Joseph could no longer lead the company. Important decisions were left aside, and debts began to accumulate. Joseph, however, was beyond caring about numbers and contracts. His mind was trapped in the last image of Liam in the hospital room, and all the things he would never be able to do or say again. Friends who once frequented his home with smiles and promises of support soon revealed their true nature. Some began to withdraw investments, while others took advantage of Joseph's vulnerability to gain an edge in contracts and partnerships. His few remaining assets were either sold off or taken by these self-serving people, who saw Joseph's downfall as an opportunity to profit. Over time, Joseph lost everything. The mansion where he and Liam had lived was taken over by the banks, and he found himself with nothing, not even a place to live. Without money, without family, and without true friends, Joseph ended up on the streets. Walking the sidewalks he once strode across with confidence, he now dragged himself head down, wearing dirty and torn clothes. The city, once the setting of his triumphs, became a place of painful memories and desolation. Sitting on a sidewalk with a paper cup, asking for change, Joseph looked towards the horizon, trying to find some meaning in his existence. "Liam, if you were still here, maybe I could bear all this," he murmured, holding the blue quartz necklace that he always carried, the only tangible memory of his son. At that moment, Joseph was just another lost soul in the vast city. Once full of hopes and dreams, he was now consumed by pain and loneliness. One day, years after the tragedy that transformed his life, Joseph, now aged and worn, entered a famous bakery in the city, a place he and Liam used to frequent. His hair was gray and unkempt, and his worn and dirty clothes reflected the difficult years he had spent on the streets. People around him looked at him with disdain, some wrinkling their noses at his appearance and others diverting their gaze, uncomfortable with the presence of a homeless person. Joseph ignored the looks, focused only on one thing, getting something to eat. His steps were slow and heavy as he entered the bakery. The smell of fresh bread and sweets enveloped him, bringing back memories of happier times. He looked around, his tired eyes fixating on the shelves filled with breads and cakes. With trembling hands, Joseph approached the counter, where a young attendant watched him with curiosity. He pointed to a simple bread, the cheapest he could find, as he took out a handful of coins from a tattered pocket. Joseph felt the weight of the blue quartz necklace hanging around his neck, a constant reminder of his beloved son, Liam. The coins clinked on the counter one by one, but they did not add up to enough to pay for the bread. The attendant looked at Joseph with a look of pity and kindness, realizing that the man before her was not just any vagrant, but someone who had clearly seen better days. "I'm sorry, sir," she began in a soft voice, "but it seems that it's not enough." She hesitated, considering whether she should make up the difference herself. Joseph raised his gaze, his eyes tired and sad, meeting those of the young woman. "It's all I have," he murmured sadly. The scene caught the attention of other customers, and Joseph felt their stares intensify, heavy with judgment and curiosity. He stood there, vulnerable and exposed, while the attendant tried to find a solution. Touched by Joseph's evident fragility, the attendant decided to act. She looked at the tired and marked face of the man in front of her and felt a pang of compassion. "Wait a moment, sir," she said with a gentle smile. "I'll sort this out." She began to take some coins from the register to make up the price of the bread, but before she could do so, the bakery manager approached. He was a burly man with a perpetually serious expression, who seemed to have little patience for situations that deviated from the norm. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice firm, cutting through the air. The attendant hesitated, but before she could explain, the manager looked at Joseph with disapproval. "He doesn't have enough money," he asked, more a statement than a question. Without waiting for an answer, he continued, "Sorry, sir, but we can't give away products for free. If you can't pay, I'll have to ask you to leave." Joseph felt his face burn with shame. He looked at the manager, trying to find some spark of empathy, but found only coldness. I just wanted a bit of bread," he murmured, almost inaudible. He clutched the blue quartz necklace tightly, as if it could protect his shattered dignity. The manager crossed his arms, his expression unyielding. "Rules are rules," he declared. "We can't make exceptions. Now please leave." The attendant tried to intervene, her voice full of plea. "Javier, he's in need. I can cover the cost." But Javier raised a hand, cutting her off. "No, we can't start doing that, or everyone will want something for free. Please escort the gentleman out." With tears in his eyes, Joseph looked around, seeing the faces of the customers who were watching him. Some seemed curious, others clearly uncomfortable with the scene. Feeling completely humiliated, Joseph lowered his head and began to withdraw, his back bent, both by the weight of the years and by the burden of his desperate situation. As Joseph was leaving the bakery, an elegant and poised woman, Elena Robinson, who had witnessed the entire scene, felt a deep indignation grow within her. Elena, a successful businesswoman known for her firm but fair demeanor, could not simply watch in silence. She rose from her table, her expression serious, as she approached the counter where the manager stood. "This is unacceptable," said Elena, her voice firm and clear, capturing the attention of everyone in the bakery. The manager turned to her, surprised by the interruption. "How can you treat someone this way?" Elena continued, looking directly at the manager. "This man just wanted a piece of bread, and you humiliated him publicly. Where is your compassion?" Then, the manager, caught off guard by the intervention, tried to defend himself. "Mom, we have rules to follow here. We can't just..." Elena interrupted him, her voice cutting through the air. "Rules? What about humanity? About treating people with dignity? That's what we're talking about here." She turned to Joseph, who had stopped at the door, looking back with a mix of surprise and gratitude. "Sir, please come back," Elena called, gesturing for him to return. "I will pay for your bread." Joseph, hesitant, took a step forward, still feeling stunned by the previous humiliation. "I don't want to cause any trouble," he murmured, looking at Elena with eyes full of apprehension and cautious hope. "You're not causing any trouble," Elena assured him with a gentle smile. "In fact, the only problem here is the lack of compassion shown." She then addressed the manager again, her tone softening slightly but still firm. "Sometimes being flexible and showing a bit of empathy can be much more valuable than blindly following rules. I hope you reflect on that." The manager, visibly uncomfortable, just nodded, unable to find an adequate response. Elena took out her wallet and paid for Joseph's bread, handing it to him with a warm smile. "Here you go, sir. I hope this gesture brings a little relief to your day." Joseph held the bread, the weight of Elena's kindness almost as overwhelming as the humiliation he had felt moments earlier. "Thank you, ma'am." "I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "There's no need to thank me," Elena replied, lightly touching Joseph's arm. "Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. That's the least we can offer each other." Elena, still feeling indignant about what she had witnessed, accompanied Joseph to the exit of the bakery. Outside, she looked at Joseph, observing the lines of fatigue and suffering on his aged face. He seemed out of place, holding the bread as if it were a precious treasure. Elena felt an increasing urgency to do more for this man. "Sir Joseph, isn't it?" Elena asked gently, remembering hearing his name. Joseph nodded, looking at her with a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. "Yes, Joseph Stewart," he replied, his voice still tinged with emotion. Elena smiled, trying to convey comfort. "Joseph, I know a piece of bread isn't enough for someone going through so much. I'd like to do something more for you." She looked around, spotting a small cozy restaurant on the corner. "How about we go to that restaurant there? We can talk a bit more, and you can have a proper meal." Joseph hesitated, his natural distrust from spending so much time on the streets mixed with the desire to accept the kindness offered. "I don't want to be a burden," he murmured, looking at the ground. "You've already done so much for me, more than anyone has in a long time." Elena shook her head, determined. "It's not a burden, Joseph, it's a pleasure. Please, let me help in some way." There was sincerity in her voice that made Joseph look up, seeing genuine empathy in her that he hadn't encountered in a long time. Walking side by side, they headed to the restaurant. The owner, a friendly man, greeted them. "Good afternoon. What can I do for you today?" he asked. "Good afternoon," Elena replied with a smile. "We'd like a table, please." The man nodded and led them to a table near the window, where the sunlight softly entered, creating a warm atmosphere. As they sat down, Elena noticed the tension in Joseph's shoulders relax a bit. She handed the menu to him, who took it with trembling hands. "Choose whatever you want, Joseph," she encouraged. "Today is on me." Joseph looked at the menu, feeling a wave of emotions at Elena's generosity. "I don't even know where to start. It's been so long since I've sat down for a real meal," he confessed, his voice soft and grateful. Elena smiled, touched by Joseph's humility. "Then let's start with something simple and comforting," she suggested. "How about a hot soup and a plate of pasta? It's simple but nutritious." Joseph nodded, unable to contain the shy smile that appeared on his face. "That would be wonderful." "Thank you very much," he said, his voice laden with emotion. As they waited for the meal, Joseph and Elena settled in, and the conversation began to flow. Joseph, still a bit reticent, gradually began to open up, sharing fragments of his life before and after the tragedy that led him to the streets. Elena listened attentively, absorbing each word with empathy and understanding. "You know," said Joseph, looking at the aged hands that rested on the table, "I never imagined my life would take this turn. Losing my son, it was like losing a part of myself. He was all I had." He took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on a distant point, lost in memories. Elena felt a pang in her heart as she heard Joseph's words. She was about to respond when something caught her attention. A simple but beautiful necklace hanging around Joseph's neck. The blue quartz stones softly glowed in the restaurant light, standing out against the worn fabric of his shirt. Elena leaned slightly forward, curious. "That necklace," she began, pointing gently, "seems very special. Does it have any meaning for you?" Joseph looked down, his fingers instinctively touching the smooth stone. A sad smile appeared on his face as he caressed the necklace. "Ah, this necklace, it's one of the few things I have left of my son. He gave it to me when we were still happy. Before everything changed." He paused, his voice choked with emotion, and then continued. "My son always said that blue quartz symbolized calm and clarity, something he always sought in his life." Elena, moved by the story, felt the depth of the bond between father and son. "It sounds like he was a very special person," she commented, her voice soft and full of respect. "It's amazing how small objects can carry so much meaning and memory." Joseph nodded, a nostalgic glimmer in his eyes. "Yes, he was. This necklace is more than just a memento. It's as if a part of him is still with me, giving me strength to continue even in the hardest times." As Elena reflected on Joseph's strength and resilience, she realized how much that simple necklace meant to him. It was a symbol of love and eternal connection with his son. "Joseph," she said with a firm but gentle tone of voice, "what you have is something precious. These memories are what help us move forward, even when everything seems lost." Joseph smiled, touched by Elena's understanding. "You're right. Maybe it's what keeps me here fighting day after day. My son has always been my inspiration, and I hope that in some way he is still guiding me." The conversation continued, filled with stories and reflections, creating a moment of connection and solidarity that Joseph had not experienced in a long time. Elena was deeply moved as she listened to Joseph's story and the meaning of the blue quartz necklace. The glow in Joseph's eyes as he spoke of his son revealed a deep love and unbearable loss, something that resonated deeply with her. Elena looked at Joseph with new understanding, feeling an even stronger connection to this man who, despite everything, still carried so much love in his heart. With a sigh, Elena shared something personal. "Joseph, I also have a son," she began, her voice soft and laden with emotion. "His name is Bernard. He is my reason for living, and just the thought of losing him, I can't imagine the pain you've gone through." She paused, her expression serious. "The pain of losing a child is something no mother or father should have to face." Joseph looked at Elena, feeling the empathy in her words. "You are very brave, Elena," he said admiringly. "It's hard to find someone who understands the depth of this pain without having gone through it." Elena shook her head, touched by Joseph's sincerity. "I may not have gone through it, but I feel that your story has touched my heart in a way that I cannot ignore. You are a strong person, Joseph, and you deserve much more than what you're going through right now." She looked around the restaurant, reflecting on how Joseph's life could change with a little help. With determination, Elena continued, "I want to help you in a more meaningful way. I don't want you just to survive. I want you to have a chance to rebuild your life. I have resources and connections that could make a difference." She looked directly into Joseph's eyes, her voice firm yet gentle. "I would like you to come to my home. You will have a safe place to stay, and we can think together about ways to get you back on your feet. This is not a charity offer, but an opportunity for a fresh start." Joseph was surprised by Elena's generosity. He hesitated for a moment, wrestling with pride and humility. "I don't know what to say," he murmured, his eyes welling up. You've already done so much for me, and now you are offering even more. I don't know how to thank you." Elena smiled, holding Joseph's hand with a comforting touch. "You don't need to thank me, Joseph. Sometimes life gives us a chance to help someone in need, and I believe we should take those opportunities. You deserve a new chance, and I am here to help provide it." Joseph, feeling moved and grateful, finally accepted Elena's offer. He knew this could be the start of a new phase in his life, one where he could find peace and dignity again, all thanks to the compassion of a stranger who became a friend. Upon arriving at Elena's house, Joseph was greeted with warm hospitality that he hadn't experienced in a long time. The house was cozy and elegantly decorated, exuding an atmosphere of welcome and serenity. Elena led Joseph down the spacious hallway, explaining that he could feel at ease and consider the house his temporary home. "I'll prepare a hot bath for you," said Elena with a gentle smile. "I'm sure you'll feel much better after relaxing a bit." She led him to a comfortable bathroom, where steam was already filling the air. "There are new clothes waiting for you in the guest room. They're simple, but I hope you'll like them." Joseph, touched by Elena's generosity, thanked her sincerely. "Elena, you don't know how much this means to me," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "It's more than I could have asked for." After a hot bath that seemed to wash away not just the dirt but also some of the emotional weight he carried, Joseph donned the clean clothes Elena had left. They were comfortable and well cared for, a welcome change from his tattered garments. Feeling renewed, Joseph left the bathroom and began to explore the house, admiring the carefully chosen details that showed Elena's personal touch. Elena then led Joseph to the guest room. "This will be your room," she said, opening the door to reveal a cozy space. "Here you have a comfortable bed, warm blankets, and all the space you need to rest and recover." Joseph looked at the bed, the blankets of soft, clean fabric, and felt a lump of emotion tighten in his throat. It was more than he could have imagined during the recent tough times. While exploring the house, Joseph met Bernard, Elena's son. Bernard, a young man with a kind gaze and polite manners, approached with a smile. "Hello, you must be Mr. Joseph," he said, extending his hand. "My mother told me about you. It's a pleasure to meet you." Joseph shook Bernard's hand, feeling the firmness and sincerity in the grip. "The pleasure is mine, Bernard. Your mother has been a blessing to me," responded Joseph, with gratitude evident in his voice. Bernard smiled warmly. "My mother has always been a person with an open heart. I'm glad she can help." He looked at Joseph with curiosity and respect, recognizing the dignity that still emanated from the man despite the hardships he had faced. Later that day, Joseph, Elena, and Bernard settled in the living room for a calm conversation. The environment was cozy, with the soft glow of the fireplace warming the space and creating an atmosphere of comfort. They laughed and shared stories, with Joseph beginning to feel more at ease in the company of his hosts. During the conversation, Joseph noticed something that made him freeze mid-sentence. His eyes fixed on a distinct mark on Bernard's arm. He blinked several times, incredulous, and widened his eyes, unable to articulate a word. The sight of that mark left him in a state of shock. Elena, noticing the sudden change in Joseph's expression, leaned toward him, concerned. "Joseph, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, trying to grasp what could have caused such a reaction. Joseph, still perplexed, slowly raised his finger and pointed to Bernard's arm. "That mark," he said, his voice a whisper laden with surprise and emotion. Bernard, confused, looked at his own arm, where a small birthmark was visible. "You mean this one?" he asked, touching the mark with curiosity. "What about it?" Elena, even more intrigued, looked at the mark and then at Joseph. "Joseph, what are you saying?" She tried to decipher what was going through Joseph's mind, still not fully understanding the gravity of the situation. Joseph took a deep breath and, without saying a word, pulled up the sleeve of his shirt, revealing a similar mark on his arm. "Look," he said, extending his arm for Elena and Bernard to see up close. "It's the same mark that I and my son had, a rare birthmark in our family." Elena and Bernard fell silent, their eyes wide with surprise. The coincidence was too striking to ignore. Elena approached to observe more closely, her face a mix of shock and curiosity. "This is incredible," she murmured, trying to process what this might mean. Bernard looked at Joseph with new understanding, feeling an unexpected and profound connection forming. "This is really rare, Joseph. It seems there's more than we imagine linking our lives," he said, his voice reflecting the same surprise and contemplation that everyone was feeling. Curious about the discovery of the birthmark, Elena couldn't contain the question that hovered in her mind. "Joseph," she began, her voice hesitant, "what was your son's name?" Joseph, still absorbed in memories, looked up at Elena. There was a mix of pain and pride in his eyes as he pronounced the name. "Liam," he replied, his voice soft and reverent. "My son's name was Liam." Elena stood still, shock and disbelief painting her face. She blinked several times, trying to assimilate what she had just heard. "Liam," she repeated almost in a whisper, a mix of emotions appearing on her face: surprise, confusion, and something deeper, an unexpected recognition. Elena turned her attention back to Joseph, the words coming out with difficulty as she tried to process the coincidence. "Joseph," she began, her voice trembling. "Bernard's father also was named Liam." She paused, trying to organize her thoughts. He never knew his father because, well, Liam disappeared suddenly before Bernard was even born. The silence that followed was charged with meaning, each of the attendees dealing with the revelation in their own way. Joseph turned pale, a mix of hope and fear taking over his features. "Are you saying that Bernard's father, Liam, could be my Liam?" His voice was full of an anxiety he couldn't disguise. Elena nodded, still stunned. "Yes, it's a possibility we cannot ignore," she replied, looking from Joseph to Bernard, who was equally surprised. "Liam never told me much about his life before we met. He always was a bit reserved about his past." Joseph, still trying to understand the situation, looked at Elena with a perplexed expression. "I never knew about you," he said, his voice laden with incredulity. "How is it possible that Liam never mentioned you? What happened between you two?" Elena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the memory she had been holding back for so many years. "Joseph," she began, choosing her words carefully, "Liam and I met many years ago, and we had an intense relationship, but we kept everything secret. He always said he wanted to tell everyone, but in a special way, as a big surprise for you and his friends. He was a romantic in that sense." She paused, her gaze distant as she remembered those times. "But one day, without warning, Liam simply ended everything. He said he couldn't continue and disappeared from my life. It was a shock to me, as we were very close. I never knew the real reason, just that he was determined to push me away." Joseph listened intently, each word from Elena penetrating deeply. "I was confused and hurt," Elena confessed. "I tried to contact him several times after that, but he never responded. When I found out I was pregnant with Bernard, I thought of every way to let him know, but it was as if he had vanished from the world." Joseph, with his mind still processing the new information, looked at Elena with an expression of sorrow. "Elena, I believe the reason why Liam withdrew was because of his illness," he said, his voice heavy with sadness and understanding. "He found out he was sick, and instead of seeking help or sharing his pain, he decided to isolate himself. Liam was always stubborn and proud, not wanting anyone to see his vulnerability. He wanted to protect everyone, distancing himself before the disease worsened." Elena listened to Joseph's words with tear-filled eyes, sadness and understanding mixed on her face as she reflected on Liam's actions. "He must have felt so alone," she murmured, her voice choked. "And to think he was trying to protect all of us by distancing himself. That's so typical of him, always thinking of others, even in times of personal pain." Joseph nodded, a distant and melancholic look in his eyes. Liam didn't want anyone to see him weak. He had incredible inner strength, but also a vulnerability that he hid well. When he learned of his illness, he shut everyone out, even me. I didn't know he had someone as important as you in his life, someone he wanted to protect until the end." Feeling the weight of Joseph's words, Elena wiped away a tear that trickled down her face. "I wish I had been there for him, to support him," she said softly. "If I had known, I would have done anything to help, to be by his side during the hard times. It's painful to think that he carried that burden alone." The shared pain between Joseph and Elena was palpable, both lamenting the fact they couldn't help Liam in his time of need. Joseph sighed, trying to find some solace in the situation. "Elena, what matters now is that we're here together. Liam is no longer with us, but we can honor his memory and try to understand what happened. Perhaps through Bernard, we can find a way to heal these wounds." Elena agreed, seeing a glimmer of hope amid all the pain. "Yes, Joseph, we need to move forward but not forget the past. Bernard deserves to know about his father, and together we can build a bridge between the past and the future." Bernard, observing the emotional exchange between Joseph and his mother, felt a wave of complex emotions. He now understood a little more about the father he never knew and the sacrifice he had made to protect the ones he loved. Determined to learn more about Liam, Bernard committed to discovering more about his story and keeping his father's memory alive. Joseph, his voice laden with emotion, began to share more about Liam with Elena and Bernard. "Liam was always a kind soul," said Joseph, his eyes gleaming with memories. "From a young age, he had a generous heart and empathy that touched everyone around him. He never hesitated to help someone in need, whether a friend or a stranger." Elena and Bernard listened attentively, feeling increasingly connected to Liam's story. Joseph continued, a nostalgic smile forming on his lips. "I remember once when he was just a boy, he saw an elderly man carrying heavy bags. Without a second thought, he ran to help. That's just the way he was, always putting others before himself. He had a unique way of making people feel special and valued." Bernard, absorbing every word, felt a mix of pride and sadness. "It sounds like he was an incredible man," he said softly. "I wish I had the chance to know him, to learn from him." Joseph nodded, his gaze filled with tenderness. He was indeed Liam had a light inside him that brightened those around him. He always said that what mattered most in life were the connections we made with others, and he lived that fully. Everyone who knew him loved him for his authenticity and kindness. Elena, with tears in her eyes, looked at Joseph with deep respect and sadness. "It's so painful to know that someone as special as Liam is gone so soon," she said, wiping a tear that trickled down. "But it's comforting to hear these stories and know that he was so loved and respected. It gives me peace, even in the midst of sadness." Joseph, feeling the growing connection with Elena and Bernard, smiled with gratitude. "I also find comfort in knowing that Liam touched so many lives. Now, through you, I feel he is still present in some way. Bernard, you have an incredible legacy to carry on, and I'm here to share everything I can about him." Bernard looked at Joseph, his eyes filled with determination and emotion. "I want to honor my father's legacy," he said firmly. "I want to be the person he would have wanted me to be, and carry forward the values and kindness he exemplified." The room was filled with a mix of emotions: sadness for the loss of Liam, but also deep gratitude for the shared memories and the newfound connection. The depth of the conversation left Joseph deeply moved. Sitting in the room with Elena and Bernard, he felt a mix of emotions that seemed to overwhelm him. Tears began to stream down his face, but this time they were not of sadness but of gratitude and joy. He looked at Elena and Bernard, his eyes shining with a new light. "It's so amazing how fate can work in unexpected ways," said Joseph, his voice choked. "I never imagined that after losing Liam, I would find you my daughter-in-law and my grandson. It's as if somehow he guided us here so that we could find each other." Elena, with her eyes also moist, held Joseph's hand tenderly. "Joseph, you are part of our family now," she said with a warm smile. "I feel that Liam is with us, bringing us together and giving us the chance to get to know each other and to build something new together." Bernard nodded, feeling connected to Joseph in a way he had never experienced before. "Grandpa," he said, hesitant to use the word for the first time but comforted by it, "I'm glad you're here. I want to learn more about our past and about the incredible man my father was, and I want us to know that we can still create new memories together." Joseph smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that he hadn't felt in a long time. "You have given me a gift I could never have imagined," he responded, his voice soft and full of emotion. "Even without Liam, I feel that he lives through us, through our actions and the stories we share. We have a chance to continue his legacy and to keep alive the kindness he brought into the world." The conversation brought everyone a sense of peace and renewal. Joseph realized that despite all the losses and challenges he had faced, he had found a new family and a new reason to live. He knew that with Elena and Bernard by his side, they could build something beautiful and meaningful, honoring Liam's memory while creating new stories and bonds. Reconnecting with Elena and Bernard brought a renewal of spirit for Joseph. Each day he felt the weight of sadness he had been carrying begin to dissipate. There was a new purpose in his life, a hope that he had not felt in a long time. The warmth and acceptance of his new family were healing the wounds left by Liam's loss. Joseph began to engage more in daily activities, helping Elena and Bernard with household chores and small responsibilities. He found joy in simple things such as preparing breakfast or walking through the garden with Bernard, discussing life and the future. "It's amazing how small things can bring so much peace," Joseph commented one day, watching the sunset. "I feel like I'm rediscovering the world." Elena, noticing the positive change in Joseph, decided it was time to help him stand up more concretely. She knew he had much to offer and wanted to see him thrive again. "Joseph," she began during one of their evening talks, "I've been thinking a lot about what you could do now with your experience and wisdom. I believe there are many opportunities for you to re-engage in the business world if you want." Joseph looked at Elena, surprised but interested. "Do you really think there's still room for me in that world?" he asked, his voice full of cautious hope. "After everything that's happened, I sometimes wonder if I'm still capable." Elena smiled confidently. "I'm sure of it, Joseph. You have a wealth of knowledge and a unique perspective that can be very valuable. I would like to help you find the right path. I have contacts and resources that can open doors to new opportunities." Joseph, moved by the offer, felt a new vigor ignite within him. "I don't know how to thank you, Elena," he said. "You and Bernard have given me more than I could ever have asked for. If there's a chance for me to rise again and do something meaningful, I want to grab it with both hands." With Elena's support, Joseph began to explore new possibilities. She helped him reconnect with former business colleagues and introduced him to new influential people. Elena also invested in some of Joseph's ideas, believing in his potential to create something new and meaningful. With each step, Joseph felt his confidence grow, and with it, a new life unfolded before him. Meanwhile, Bernard watched with admiration and support, happy to see his grandfather find a new purpose. "Grandpa," he said one day with a proud smile, "it's inspiring to see how you're reinventing yourself. I'm sure you'll accomplish incredible things." Joseph, touched by Bernard's words, responded with a warm smile. With a family like ours by my side, I feel I can face anything. Let's build something beautiful together in memory of Liam and as a celebration of what's still to come. With a renewed spirit and an inner peace he hadn't felt in years, Joseph began to rebuild his life and career with revitalized energy. He became involved in new business projects, this time with a more mature perspective and a broader view of the world. Now wiser and more empathetic, Joseph decided that his businesses would not only be about profit but also about making a difference in people's lives. Elena was an invaluable partner in this process. She offered her support, expertise, and resources, helping Joseph connect with investors and partners who shared his new values. "Joseph, your experience and work ethic are invaluable," she would say during one of the many strategic meetings they conducted together. "By combining this with a social impact mission, we are creating something truly special." Joseph, with the enthusiasm of a young entrepreneur, found himself energized by this new phase of his life. "I never imagined that starting over could be so invigorating," he confessed to Elena. "It's like I have a second chance to create something meaningful that honors Liam's memory and helps others beyond their business partnership." Joseph became a constant presence in Bernard's life, visiting him frequently and participating in his activities. They developed a deep and affectionate relationship where Joseph became a mentor and a father figure to Bernard. "Grandpa, every time we talk, I learn something new," Bernard would say, appreciating the time they spent together. "It's like I'm discovering who my father was through you." Joseph smiled, touched by Bernard's words. "Knowing that I can share these stories and lessons with you gives me renewed purpose. It's a way to keep Liam's spirit alive in our hearts," he responded with an expression of gratitude. Over time, Joseph's efforts began to bear fruit. He became even more successful than before, but this time with a fuller understanding of what truly mattered. He was building a new career and a new life, surrounded by the love and support of Elena and Bernard. "Joseph, you've made it," Elena said with evident pride in her voice during the inauguration of a new venture. "You've rebuilt your life and touched so many others in the process." Joseph, looking around and seeing the joy and satisfaction on the faces of his new family and partners, felt a deep happiness. "I could never have done this without you," he replied, moved. "You gave me a second chance and a new family. That's more than I could have asked for." With Elena by his side and Bernard as an integral part of his life, Joseph finally felt complete. He had overcome loss and pain, finding a new reason to live and thrive. More importantly, he was building a legacy that reflected both his success and the love and values that he and Liam always cherished. As the days went by and Joseph saw his businesses flourish again, he began to reflect on the future, feeling the weight of the years on his shoulders. Joseph realized that it was time to prepare the next generation to take over the legacy he and Elena were building. With this decision in mind, he turned his eyes to Bernard, seeing in him a promising young man full of potential and integrity. Bernard, Joseph said one day as they sat in the office reviewing some documents, "I've observed how dedicated you are and how quickly you learn. You have a good heart and a business instinct that is rare to find. I think it's time to start thinking about the future." Bernard, surprised by the seriousness in Joseph's tone, looked at him with curiosity. "What do you mean, Grandpa?" he asked, interested and slightly anxious. Joseph smiled, a smile full of pride and affection. "I want you to start taking on more responsibilities. I'm getting older and I won't be able to be in charge forever. It's important that you're prepared to continue what we started here. I want to train you, share everything I've learned over the years so that you can lead with wisdom and heart." Bernard felt a wave of emotions. He had always admired Joseph and was inspired by his determination and ethics. "Grandpa, that's a big responsibility," Bernard said, his voice full of respect. "I feel honored that you trust me to follow in your footsteps. I promise to dedicate myself and learn everything I can." Joseph nodded, pleased with Bernard's response. "I know you will, my boy. And it's not just about business. It's about maintaining the values we consider important: integrity, compassion, and the desire to do good. That's what really matters." The following months were intense learning for Bernard. Joseph guided him through the intricacies of business, from market analysis to team management, and the importance of maintaining honest and transparent relationships with partners and clients. They spent hours discussing strategies, assessing risks, and exploring new opportunities. Elena, always a supportive presence, contributed her own experience and insights, helping Bernard develop a broad and inclusive view of the business world. During one of these learning sessions, Bernard expressed his gratitude. "Grandpa, you and my mom have been incredible in teaching and supporting me. I want to honor that trust and ensure that what we're building continues to grow and prosper, always maintaining the values you've taught me." Joseph, touched by Bernard's words, responded with a warm smile. "Bernard, I'm proud of you. I'm sure Liam would be too. Watching you grow and become such a capable and ethical young man is the greatest reward I could ask for, and when the time comes, I know you will carry this torch with pride and honor." With the ongoing training and unconditional support from Joseph and Elena, Bernard was increasingly prepared to take on leadership. With this responsibility came the opportunity to honor his family's legacy and build a bright future full of promise and achievements. When Joseph felt that Bernard was truly ready to take on the responsibilities that he and Elena had built, he decided it was time to pass the family legacy on to the next generation. To mark this important moment, Joseph prepared a small, intimate ceremony just for the three of them in the garden of Elena's house. At dusk, Joseph called Bernard and Elena to the garden. The soft twilight light illuminated the setting, lending a serene and special atmosphere to the occasion. Joseph held the blue quartz stone necklace that belonged to Liam, Bernard's father, feeling the symbolic weight of the object in his hands. The necklace was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was an emblem of love, sacrifice, and continuity. Joseph looked into Bernard's eyes, seeing the young man he had become confident, ethical, and full of promise. "Bernard," he began, his voice firm yet laden with emotion, "today is a very special day for our family. This blue quartz necklace has been an important symbol in our story. It belonged to your father, and now I want to pass it on to you." Bernard, surprised and honored, watched as Joseph handed him the necklace. He took the necklace with trembling hands, feeling a deep connection with his father and grandfather. "Grandpa, I'm at a loss for words," said Bernard, moved. "This necklace means so much to you, and now it means even more to me. I will wear it with pride and responsibility." Joseph smiled, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. He placed his hands on Bernard's shoulders, fixing his gaze on his grandson's eyes. "Bernard, when you wear this necklace, you are not just carrying a symbol of our family, but also the values and traditions that define us. I want you to always remember to be a good, fair, and compassionate man, just as your father was, and as I have tried to be. Respect the traditions, but also be open to the new and unexpected. That is the true spirit of our legacy." Elena, watching with tears of pride and happiness, added, "We are so proud of you, Bernard. We know you will do great things, and that you will always honor the memory of your father and the legacy of our family." Bernard, now with the necklace around his neck, felt a mix of emotions: pride, responsibility, and a deep connection to his heritage. "I promise I will do my best to follow in the footsteps of my father and you, Grandpa," he said, his voice firm and full of determination. "I will honor this necklace and what it represents, and always remember what is important in life." Joseph, visibly moved, embraced Bernard. "I am sure you will do so, my grandson, and know that we will always be by your side, supporting you every step of the way." That moment was a passing of the baton, a rite of passage that solidified the bond between generations and promised a future full of hope and possibilities. Despite all the hardships and losses, the family was more united than ever, ready to face whatever came next with love and determination. Over the following years, Bernard kept his promise. He led the company with a blend of wisdom and empathy, earning the respect and admiration of everyone who worked with him. Under his leadership, the company thrived both financially and as a positive force in the community. Bernard became known for his commitment to ethics and social responsibility, reflecting the values that Joseph and Liam held dear. Joseph, observing Bernard's growth and success, felt a profound satisfaction and inner peace. He knew he had passed the baton to capable hands and that his family's legacy was in good hands. With this, Joseph felt he could finally retire, enjoying precious moments alongside Elena and Bernard. His days were filled with the simple joy of being with family. He spent afternoons playing chess with Bernard, sharing old stories, and laughing together. Elena, always by his side, was a pillar of love and support, and together they savored the fruits of a well-lived and meaningful life. In moments of tranquility, Joseph often reflected on the journey he had traveled, the joys, the sorrows, and the lessons learned. He was grateful for having found Elena and Bernard, and for having had the opportunity to build a new chapter of love and hope. Now, as the sun set on the horizon, casting a golden glow over the garden where so many memories had been made, Joseph felt at peace. He knew that even after his departure, his family would continue to thrive and honor the values that he and Liam had championed. With a serene smile, Joseph embraced Elena and Bernard, feeling complete and fulfilled, knowing that his legacy was secure and that his family was bound by unbreakable ties of love.